So next, we're going to focus on some more advanced prompting techniques. So not necessarily about writing the prompt itself and different words and all of that sort of thematic stuff we've already covered, but actual really cool things we can do, like create image prompts, blend images together. How do we modify an existing image by custom zooming and modifying the prompt after it's already been generated? We'll talk about remixing and blending. There's a bunch of stuff here that's really worthwhile. By the way, this little asset over here was generated with Midjourney. I used the flat white background and then just deleted the background to make it look, I think, kind of nice. So just an example of what I was talking about earlier. So the first thing I'd like to show you is the custom zoom option. Now, we've already talked about the new Midjourney 5.2 zoom options once you upscale an image. So let me just come up with an image. Why don't we imagine I don't know, how about a forest of aspen trees, autumn. Let's go with illustration. Sure. So I'm going to get, hopefully, some nice illustrations of some golden aspens that maybe one of which I'll like. I'll be back when that finishes. Okay, that finished up. Let's pick one of these, maybe this one with the meandering creek going through it, and I'm going to upscale it. So that's 3. So here's our upscaled version. We've already talked about the very strong and subtle buttons that are new, and zoom out 2 and 1.5, also new, but we did not cover the custom zoom button, because it's not just a custom zoom button, it actually allows us to modify the prompt itself. So I'm going to click this, it opens up a form, and you'll see that it keeps my original prompt in here, a forest of aspen trees, autumn illustration, but it also has aspect ratio, so I can modify the aspect ratio of an image after it's been created, and it has a zoom in here. -- zoom has a value going between 1 and 2. So 1 is basically to keep it the same. 2 is 2 times zoom. 1.5 would be, well, 1.5 times zoom. Just like clicking the, where'd it go? Just like clicking this zoom out 1.5 times. So what I want to show is that I can completely change the context of how the zoom works. Instead of keeping the same exact prompt and just zooming out, what I'll do is something totally different. And I'm going to go with a framed print on the wall of a modern living room. I'll zoom out 2 times, the maximum. I'll keep the image a square. Sure, I'll keep it as a square to start. And this will use this base image here. So remember what this looks like, aspens, but the most notable feature is this creek meandering through. And we have to wait a bit. This tends to take longer than anything else that I've tried in Midjourney. I don't know if it's actually slower or not, but you can see already, I mean, take a look. It's using that exact image, putting it in a frame. Let's see if it moves it off the sofa. It is kind of right on top of a sofa, which is maybe not what we want, but of course you could adjust the prompt. There's a lot of things that we could do to try and tweak that, or maybe just say on a blank gallery wall. I'm just trying to illustrate that this does work. Even if it's not perfect, it's using that original image and I can tweak it. Pretty cool. Well, I'll be back when it's done. All right. So yeah, it kind of crammed them right on top of the sofa. There's nowhere really to sit in this example. Let's take one of them, maybe this one here. So that would be 2. I'm going to upscale it. And then I'll show you that we can also modify the aspect ratio, as we've already discussed, but we haven't actually tried using custom zoom. So maybe we'll go to a 3:2 aspect ratio. I do have to keep the zoom parameter in here. Now, if I don't want more zooming to necessarily happen, I could keep zoom at 1, but I'll go to zoom 2. So we'll zoom out further. Oh, what is it unhappy with? What did I mess up? Zoom 2, that should be fine. There we go. I don't know what that was. Maybe I had a typo and I just completely missed it. Wait for this to finish. I'll be back. So you can already see what's happening, right? The original image is in there. I zoomed out once to get it in a frame print. Now I'm zooming out again and we're getting way more of a living room. And I didn't change the prompt, right? I could even get crazier and say, image on a computer screen. Maybe we'll do one more example of that. You could make some cool animations using this, where each frame is zoomed out. I've seen people do this with other tools, not Midjourney, because it hasn't supported it until very recently, but other tools do support it. And now we're getting a full living room with the same couch and the same very cramped print right on top of the sofa. And then inside of that print, we have our original illustration that we upscaled right here. So we're zooming, changing the prompt, changing the aspect ratio, or changing the zoom, and possibly doing them all at the same time. Okay, so I want to show one more example. I've generated a grid of fantasy illustration of wizard casting a spell, portrait. Let's pick one of these, maybe this one here, 3. I'll upscale it. And I want to then put this whole thing in a glowing sphere or something like that. So I'm going to change my prompt using custom zoom. I'll zoom out 2 times, so the maximum. I guess I'll keep it a square. And I'll change this prompt to be glowing sphere on bookshelf. Let's see how it does with the on bookshelf part. And submit this. And hopefully we get the wizard casting a spell from inside a glowing sphere. I'll be back when that's done. It's looking promising, right? We start to see the same exact wizard from up here with the same orb, the same hands, which, by the way, we kind of got some janky hands. I didn't even look at that, but, you know, I had a whole little video on that earlier. Midjourney is still struggling with hands, although looks like he's missing a finger here too. So, constant battle with hands and teeth, especially, and text especially, but that's not the point of this video. The point is that we can modify the prompt while zooming out and get some really cool results. If you have something that you like and you want to generate some very unique variations on that are very directed, right? I want it to be zoomed out into a sphere or zoomed out to show that the wizard is actually on a computer screen or on a playing card or who knows what. It is feasible now. And you can, of course, change the aspect ratio too, which I didn't do here. All right. So that's our first advanced prompting technique. It's a brand new feature, upscale an image, and then you can use the custom zoom button. The next advanced prompting technique we'll cover is image prompting, which is basically what it sounds like. We can provide an image in our prompt and have Midjourney do something with the image. We can blend 2 images together, or we can give it an image and give it some text and modify that image or use the image as an inspiration. There's a lot of stuff we can do. We can control the weighting of the image. We'll cover that in a separate video. But to start, we need some images. And the format of this is that we provide our image as a URL, so a hosted image somewhere. We provide that URL in the prompt at the beginning of the prompt, and that part is important. It does need to come first before the rest of your text prompt. I have a handful of images that I've put in a folder that are just, copyright-free images. So I'm going to pick one of them, maybe this image here, this stack of sort of rainbow rings. And the easiest way to get an image URL is just to drag it into Discord. I'm just messaging a direct message to the Midjourney bot, and this will upload the image for me, and then I can copy the image link. And then I can use that in my Imagine prompt. If you already have an image hosted somewhere else, you can just use that URL, but the image does need to be hosted somewhere. So again, you can just drag it into Discord. That's the easiest option. Now, to write an image prompt, all I need to do is provide the image URL first. Again, it has to come first. And then any text prompt I want after that. So I don't know what I want to do here. Maybe I'll take this image and then add the text donuts or pies. It kind of looks like a stack of let's go with donuts or maybe bagels. Let's go with rainbow bagels. So I have my image and then I have my prompt and then any parameters at the end. I'm not going to add any. Well, you know what? Maybe for fun, I'll do this first example. And then I'll try increasing stylize a lot. Let's go to like 900. And let's do chaos. Actually, let's just leave it at those 2. And I'll be back when this finishes up. So I provide my image by first dragging it into Discord or just copying an image URL somewhere. And then I put that at the beginning of the prompt and then any text afterwards. And you know what? While we're waiting, let's just do one more example. I'll take this really bad, I shouldn't say bad, a 3D render of a skull. I couldn't find a good photo of a skull that was copyright or Creative Commons licensed. So I will take this skull and let's combine this maybe. So I'll upload it. I'll copy the link and I'll combine it with roses. So I'll paste the link in and then beautiful pink and red roses and orchids. I really like orchids. Okay. Let's see what we end up with when this is done. Okay, things are slowly progressing. Here's my skull with orchids and, whoops, I just moved, orchids and roses, although it mostly looks like orchids right now. But you can see it's working, right? It's using that initial input image and then using my text. Then I have this one, my rainbow bagels. That one's pretty good, right? It's using basically the composition of this original, it's blending that with the text. So it doesn't take every single element, right? We don't have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We don't have 7 bagels stacked, but it's giving sort of the general vibe of the image, if that makes sense. And this is one way of trying to control the composition that Midjourney generates for you, is to actually give it an image that contains a composition that you like. So let's say I have this vision in my head of a futuristic carnival pier jutting into the ocean from the right side of the screen, and it's in a lot of ocean showing. Well, I'm not getting that here. It's not exactly what I had in mind. It's centered, like a lot of things in Midjourney. It just tries to center things for us. And I really want a composition more like this, where there's a lot more negative space, and the pier is going from the right to the left, and there's negative space on the left side of the screen as well. And it feels more, I guess, desolate. Let's just say I like this composition. What I can do, upload an image, and then run futuristic carnival pier jutting into the ocean at nighttime, and these resulting images are certainly closer. I mean, this one is pretty close. It's also worth remembering that this aspect ratio is completely different. By default, it's going to make a square image, but if I had used the aspect ratio parameter, I probably could have easily achieved something similar to this. Now, that's just a simple example, but you can see how the composition of the image is impacting the end results compared to this prompt. Now, it's not just the composition, right? Other elements are making its way, the ocean, the sky, the shape of the pier. So it's not like it's only going to look at the composition, but if you have an image as a starting point, you can at least use that to influence the composition of your end result. Here's a few more examples. I uploaded this image of balloons on a wall. I think it's maybe the floor, the wall, who knows. Colorful balloons. And then I gave it the prompt of pufferfish alongside those balloons in that image. And this is what we end up with. So some fun stuff, right? It's kind of capturing the composition of a bunch of colorful balloons and orbs, but in a whole bunch of different ways, right? This one is a pufferfish covered in the actual dots. This one is a pufferfish on the background, same as these three are all kind of similar. And then something I want to show you that's very important to note is that Midjourney struggles with specific faces. And I uploaded 2 photos of myself, one where my face is very clear, and then I used that image a bunch of times to try and generate myself in a futuristic space city, and these people look basically nothing like me. I mean, they're like, a 20 or 30-year-old white guy wearing a hoodie. It's close-ish. I shouldn't say nothing like me, but it's not me. And this is really common. I have seen people on Reddit get their likeness eventually by re-rolling, just clicking this button basically over and over and over. But I tried 3 or 4 times, and none of these really look like me. It gets the gist of kind of what I was wearing. I had a backpack on. And then I did the same thing with this photo of me. I was raking a bunch of weeds out of a garden bed. We got a sun hat on, got a rake, and where are you? Right here. Again, not me. I wish I had muscles like that, but that's not me. But it took some of the inspiration from the image. So, you'll get mixed results. It can be fun using an image plus text, but it's something where it's kind of chaotic, and you need to re-roll a bunch to find a result that you're happy with. And don't get your hopes up for particular faces or people. Finally, here's one more I did. I used an image of, I think his name is Ernst Haeckel. I don't know how you say his last name, but he makes these really, well, he's long gone, but he did all these beautiful drawings that are pretty famous of all sorts of creatures and diatoms and corals and all sorts of things. And I took this image and I added on orchids to the prompt, and we end up with a pretty cool hybrid. I mean, these are cool images. I especially like that one. I'm going to upscale that one. And we can get some cool results. So there's still more to learn about using images. We have yet to see how to blend images, how to control the weight of an image in a prompt. That is all coming up. But here's my nice orchid sort of diagrammy thing. It's cool. Next up, we're going to talk about the image weight parameter, which only matters when you are using an image prompt that is combined with some text. So I've uploaded this image here of some flowers. This, what's this guy's name? I can't remember the artist's name. I think he's Dutch. Beautiful paintings of flowers, still lifes. I don't know what you would call that. Anyway, I'm going to copy the URL, and I'm going to combine this with a coral reef. Sure. And by default, both parts of this prompt, the image and the coral reef part, will have an equal weight. They both will have essentially a weight of 1. The ratio between them will be 1 to 1. But there's a parameter called image weight. I think it's just IW. I don't even know if there's a long version. Yeah, it's just IW. And the possible range of values is from 0 to 2. The default is 1, as we've already discussed. So what I'm going to go through here is a few examples. I'm going to do a prompt that uses our URL, coral reef, and then --iw, image weight. And this still goes at the end where all the parameters go. Even though the image is at the beginning, we put the image weight parameter, just like any other parameter, chaos or stylized, at the very end. Let's do like 0.1. And then I'll do a 0.5. I'm going to run a bunch of these, I guess. 0.7. The default is 1, which is what we're getting here. And then I'll run some that are above 1. 1.2. I'm not really going at even intervals, but we'll do 1.5 and then 1.8. Okay, so the maximum is 2. The minimum value is 0 and the default is 1. Here's our default, where we're getting a pretty equal share of the original image, plus plenty of coral reef. We've got fish, sand, water, bubbles, all sorts of stuff mixing with the flowers. And the first batch that I ran is starting to come in. So you can see with the lower image weights, like this one has an image weight of, let's even go lower, 0.1. I don't know if we could even identify any of the flower influence in here. It's pretty much all coral reef. Here's 0.5. Now this has some of the image in it. There are some flower-esque forms like this right here, this right here. Also, it's a darker background because the image has a black background. And this is, yeah, so this one really shows it off here, the background. You can also see flowers over here, but it's pretty much a coral reef. If you were to look at that, you probably wouldn't know that there was a flower image behind it. Then we have 0.7, and this starts to get closer to what we saw originally, which was the default value of 1. So there's flowers in here, but it's still very much coral reef heavy, fish, water, bubbles, sand at the bottom, lots of coral, but then still some floral stuff, and the composition starts to resemble the composition from the image a bit more. And let's see, are any of these finishing yet? This is a reminder of the image, by the way. Here is the original. Okay, looks like one of them just finished. Here's 1.2. So this is now more flowery than it is coral reefy. Mostly flowers in here. It's still in an underwater scene. There's still fish, but very floral heavy in the middle. Here's 1.5. Very floral heavy again, even more so. Some of them barely have any coral reef aspects except for fish in the background. It's basically like a bouquet of painted flowers underwater. And then we go all the way up to 1.8, where it is very similar to the image. So similar, in fact, that the aspect ratio of the image starts to take over. The image that I uploaded is not square, as you can see here. So we end up with these black bars. Now, of course, if we were doing this, in a professional capacity, we would either get a square image or change the aspect ratio of our prompt to match the aspect ratio of our initial image. Because otherwise, when we start leaning heavily on the image, we increase that image weight above 1, we start to see black bars. But otherwise, there's still some aspects of the coral reef, right? There's still some fish. It still kind of looks like an underwater background, but it's very, very flowery compared to our earlier versions that are very, very coral reefy. So I'll put them all together on a slide so we can look at them in sequence. Okay, so here are all of them together. I wish I had done 8. They would have fit nicer than 7 does. But you can see we go from almost pretty much entirely coral reef to a little floral influence, more floral influence, even more. This is image weight of 1, the default, and then less coral reef and way more floral, all the way up to here, where there's just a tiny hint of the coral reef in the fish. And I think that's really it. This was an image weight of 1.8, so the floral image was weighted much higher. So that's image weight, or really it's --iw, which stands for image weight, and you use it to control the strength of the image in a prompt when you have an image plus text. And remember that the default value is 1, and it goes from 0 up to 2. So another thing that we can do with image prompting is actually provide multiple images. Instead of an image plus text, I could do 2 images. So I'm just going to upload a bunch of images to use. I've already uploaded some of these, but they've scrolled long by with all the other images I've generated. So I'm just going to get a couple of things to work with. Maybe the pink balloons and these cranes. Okay, let's upload those images. And then the syntax is exactly the same if I want to create a hybrid between two different images. We're also going to talk about blend mode separately, which allows us to basically do that, exactly that, blend images. But let's take this pier photo. So copy the link, and then this guy who's flying through the air, and see if we can get a guy flying through the air in this image, or a pier in this image. Let's try something completely different. I have no idea how this will turn out. Let's try the pink balloons. And then after that first URL, I'll have a space, and then I'll put my, not copy image, copy link, my second URL here. And then any other sort of parameters can go afterwards. So it looks like you can kind of see we've got a pier and what seems to be a guy or a character flying through the air based off of this and this. And for fun, let's try one more. Let's do these cranes, origami cranes. So I'll paste that in there. And I don't know, let's see what happens if we combine it with this one. This woman walking down this very empty space. Okay, so this one finished up, and you can see we've got basically a hybrid between the two, right? A person flying through the air over a pier or near a pier. This one is still coming along, the balloons with the flowers. Here we go. Now we run into the whole aspect ratio thing again, where I maybe would want to specify, a 2x3, or wait, 3x2? No, 2x3 or 4x5 or something to try and match the aspect ratio of this initial image, because this initial flower painting is a tall rectangle. And so we get these ugly bars. Ooh, this is looking like it could turn out cool. But we do have a hybrid if we look at the content, right, where it's a similar composition to those flowers and that painting, but then things are balloony and plasticky and spherical and shiny. And did this one finish up? Here we go. We've got our woman walking down a plaza with origami cranes. Kind of, they're a little bit messed up. It happens when you're working with any of these image models, but we could regenerate and eventually get one that looked good. This one's missing its head. This is more of a flamingo. I think the original image is more, it's actually more of a swan shape than a typical origami crane. Anyway, now you're not limited to only 2 images, although after 2, it becomes a little harder to see the impact of every single image, and you may need to regenerate your grids a bunch of times to see what's happening. But here's an example where I actually did 2 images plus text. So the first image here is the pier image right here. The second image is the guy flying through the sky, and then I put the piece of text, spaceship, UFO. So we get the pier and the beach, the sky, we get the UFO, and then down here maybe you can see, like right there and right here and on the spaceship right there, there is a human character, and it's hard to say if it's coming from this image or not, but that's about all that maybe is coming from that image. Here's another example. I did the origami swans combined with the image of this woman walking through a plaza or a bridge or something. So this image here, this one here, and then UFO. And we get sort of a paper origami-ish UFO that has the same pinkish hues. And we also get the woman walking through the space with an umbrella, sort of the same desolate composition. So it does work, but you may need to play around with it a bunch of times to get the result you want. And you can also do more than 2 images. So I did 2 images plus text, but at a minimum, you need 1 image with text or 2 images, or just text, I guess. But if you're going to use an image, it doesn't really work if you only provide a single image and nothing else. The next thing I'll show you is that we have an alternative interface for blending images together, which is the /blend command. So instead of /imagine, we can do /blend. And this is basically, it's allegedly the exact same stuff behind the scenes when it comes to how the images are blended together. It's the same as what we've already seen, like in the previous videos where we were doing, imagine this URL with this URL. It's just a different interface. So if I do /blend, it allows me to drag and drop images right here, or click and upload an image. So let's take this image. This is a Midjourney image of this sort of computer thing that I generated. And then maybe one of my other images that I have, how about this rainbow right here? So instead of having to upload the images separately, then copy the URL, and then use the URLs, I can upload the images in place right here using /blend and then run it. But functionally, behind the scenes, it does the exact same thing. It will blend our images together. Now we just wait for that to finish. Another thing to know about Blend is that it supports up to 5 different images. So I can attach, my first image, let's say that one. When you go beyond 2, this is just a little tangent here, it tends to, in my experience, the returns diminish and you don't really get much from all of the images, especially if you go to like 4 or 5 separate images that you're trying to blend together. It doesn't work all that well. 2 tends to be the sweet spot. But you can go up to 5 images in blend mode. So I have 2 images here, but I can then select an image 3, maybe this yellow tiger, and I could go all the way up to 5 images. But as I mentioned, it just doesn't work all that well. I don't think those 3 images are going to work well together at all. There's different styles. One of them is just a big yellow background with a tiger drawing on it. We'll see what happens. This is more just showing you that blend mode exists. And it's especially useful if you're on mobile. I don't really use Midjourney on mobile, but a lot of the users do. And it's a huge pain to upload images separately, copy the links, paste the links. So you use the blend command to do the same thing with just a single command, /blend instead of /imagine. And it looks like, okay, we are getting the tiger, we're getting my computery thing, and we're getting some of the, what was the other image I used? Oh, the coral reef. Here's the blending of that rainbow graphic with the computer tower graphic. It's kind of interesting. It is a good combination of the two, I guess. It was sort of an abstract concept added in. Just as a recap, it was this image blended with this image. And this is kind of good. I'd say it's our coral reef with flowers mixed with the tiger image, mixed with the computer image. So in this case, it kind of worked. We're not getting a ton of the flowers / coral reef, but all the elements are here. And you can go up to 5 when you're using blend mode. And I believe you can actually go beyond that with a regular image prompt where you're copying the URLs. But anything beyond 2, the quality tends to go down in the resulting grids. So that's blend. It's a separate command from imagine. It's basically optimized for mobile to allow you to blend images together. But you can do the exact same thing with /imagine. You just have to actually have the image URLs, right? So that's what I did right here. No, that was not it. Any of these from earlier. /imagine, put the URL, put the other URL, and as many as you want. Okay. In this video, I'll keep it quick, but I want to talk about a common strategy or an approach some people will use where you basically generate individual Midjourney images that you like, and then use blend or an image prompt to combine those things together. So it's not just about existing images you have on your machine, a picture of myself or something I took of my dog, but also I could use any image I've generated with Midjourney. I just need to have the URL. So let's try doing 2. Let's imagine a Greek sculpture of Apollo, and then I'm also going to imagine completely separately. What have I done? I've done too many flowers, haven't I? I kind of want to add flowers to the Greek sculpture though, so I'll go with beautiful flowers and vines. And honestly, if I really wanted a sculpture of Apollo with flowers on it, I could really just say sculpture of Apollo with flowers. But I'm just going to show that this is an approach where if you have different Midjourney images you've generated that you're happy with, you can then combine them using blend or image prompt. So I'll wait for this to finish. Okay, so this finished. Let's upscale maybe this one. So that's 3. And here's my beautiful vines and flowers. Did it finish up? Which one do I like the best? I think I kind of like this one. Let's see what that looks like if I combine those two. So I'm going to upscale 2. Okay, and I'm going to just copy the image link from here. I can just get it there without having to download it myself and then re-upload it. If I'm just playing around with it here, I don't need it on my machine. I'll just use the Discord link. So now I can do either blend or imagine, and then put the first link, which is the Apollo image, take this second link of my flowers. I'll paste those in, I'll hit enter, and I'll be back when that finishes. Okay, so that finished up, and those are looking pretty good, right? We're getting the Greek sculpture, we're getting the same sort of arch shape from the original image, the same red flowers and vines, the grayish, I don't know what, misty sky in the background. It used this, and it used this, and it did a decent job combining them. And we'll get a very different result. I'm running it right now. If I had just said Greek sculpture of Apollo with beautiful flowers and vines, we'll get some nice results, I have no doubt, but they're going to be very, very different. But these are all pretty similar, right? If we look at the four of them, they're extremely similar, and it's because I gave it two images I was already happy with. So that's why some people really like this approach. You can generate thousands of different flowers until you find the one you like, generate thousands of different Greek sculptures until you find something that you roughly like, and then combine the two, and you'll have more control over that output versus trying to write the perfect prompt for each component. Now, these are still cool, right? And it follows the instructions, but it's very different than combining the two specific images that I had already generated beforehand. So you could try this, if you want to control more about the resulting images that you get, you could at least start with one initial image. If you really like these red flowers and this archway, start with that, and then you can put whatever you want in that scene. And that's pretty much it for this approach. Use Midjourney, generate images first, then use Midjourney to combine the Midjourney-created images into a new image. Next, we're going to talk about remix mode, which is a sometimes powerful, sometimes slightly frustrating option, but it opens up a lot of possibilities if you have patience and if you can write the correct adjustments. You can basically take an existing image you've upscaled and remix it and tweak it. So it's our best hope for taking something that we've already created and regenerating something very similar. And you'll see that it's not perfect, but it does work pretty well sometimes. So I'm going to start by just generating a very simple illustration of a 20-year-old man with blonde hair and glasses standing outside a bar in New York City, a 3:2 aspect ratio. So I'm doing an illustration first, and then I'm going to pick one that I like and upscale it. I'll be back when that's done. Okay, so I've got my grid. Let's pick one that has, they're all pretty good, but what's the most distinctive composition? Maybe this one here where we've got this awning going from right to left. So I'm going to pick that one, which is 3. So I'm going to upscale 3. And it shouldn't take very long. Okay, so we've already discussed that we have a very subtle and very strong button. But I don't really have any control over how those variations work. If I can decide if it's subtle or strong, let's start with subtle. And it's going to make variations on this image. But what if I want to remove the glasses, change the color of something? Make him a woman, make him a robot, turn it into a photograph. These are the sort of things that we can try to do with Remix. Now, it's not perfect, as I've already said, but it is our best chance. So here's, the first set of subtle variations. I guess I could do a strong variation and just pray that he turns into a woman or that his glasses disappear, but that's not a great approach. So what we can do is turn on Remix mode. We have to enable it, and there's two ways of doing this. One option is to use the settings command, and then, I lost it. Here it is. Select Remix mode right there. And now Remix mode is enabled. The other option is to use, this is something I ran like 20 minutes ago and it just decided to run. Okay. The other option is to use the prefer command, /prefer followed by Remix, and this will toggle it. So I just toggled it off. Now I've toggled it on. So it will stay on as long as I have it set to on, and then I can turn it off if I want to. Now, what happens is when I've upscaled an image, like this one here, now when I click very subtle or very strong, let's start with very subtle, I have a form where I can remix the prompt. So it doesn't just go ahead and generate its own variations, just according to whatever game plan the model has. Instead, it allows me to tweak the prompt, and I can change things. I can't change everything. If we go to the documentation, you go to Advanced Prompts Remix, there's a little table here that says the different things that will and will not affect the variations that we make using Remix mode. Aspect ratio is one. No is one. Stop, tile, and video. But otherwise, we can't change things like quality. We can't change things like stylize inside of our remix or chaos. But we can also just change the prompt. So I could do something like this. Illustration of a 20-year-old man with red hair, and I'll keep everything exactly the same. And I'm doing this with a subtle variation in my remix. I'll wait for that one to finish, and we'll take a look at it. There we are. It's starting. This guy looks like a bit of a clown. Oh, there we go. But notice my composition is preserved for the most part, right? We have that same dark blue awning going from right to left. We've got this red sign back there, a banner, the same jacket, shirt color, the same pose, the same overall composition, same glasses. but we have red hair now. So the face changes a little bit, right? This is just going to happen. It won't preserve the exact initial image perfectly, but it does it well enough that we can tweak things a little bit at a time and then generate more variations. So let's try something even more drastic. Let's do a strong, well, let's start with subtle. I always start with the subtle variations when I'm remixing, and then if I'm unhappy with that result, then we can go to strong. Well, let's change this whole thing to a photograph. So instead of an illustration of a 20-year-old man, let's go with photograph shot on, I don't know, Hasselblad, Canon, of a 20-year-old man, blonde hair, glasses. So I'll go back to blonde hair. That's fine. So this variation that I'm remixing now is changing the artistic style or the medium entirely from an illustration to hopefully a photograph. But I still want to have the same general composition, and you can see that I already have that in our early iterations here at 0%, now 35%. The red banner is there. That same awning is there. The canopy, the lights inside this shop or bar or whatever it is, the jacket. But now it's starting to look like a photograph. So this is pretty powerful. It tends to work well if you're changing the medium, if you're tweaking a color or something. It struggles a bit more with bigger changes, but here we go. Very similar to the original, right? All of these are very similar to what we started with, except, of course, they're photographs now instead of illustrations. And then if I decide I don't want the glasses, I can try to make a variation. Do I want to do it? Let's do it to one of the photographs. Let's upscale this one maybe that has those bright blue glasses. So upscale 1. Remember, this only works if you have remix mode on. Otherwise, when I click these very buttons, it doesn't ask me to put my remix prompt in. So I'm going to remove glasses, but I'm also going to come in and say no glasses. Okay, let's see how that does. And just to remind you, the no parameter is one of the few things that does actually affect variations. We cross our fingers and we wait. Looks like there's no glasses yet. I mean, look at that. That's pretty flawless. Of course, the face changes pretty much anytime you work with faces in Midjourney. You'll get different faces every time, and they always tend to be attractive people no matter what. It's harder than you might think to make somebody who is average or even ugly. The model just tends to favor very pretty people. However, the glasses are gone. Compare that to what we had in the original. This was a remix already. It was an upscaled version of a remix where we turned an illustration, this illustration here, into a photograph. Then we took that photograph, we picked one, this one, and we tried to remove the glasses. Now we can take one of these and we can go a little further. Let's take, I don't know, this one down here, looking at the back. Maybe we'll just stick with the first one there. We'll upscale. And so far I've just been doing subtle variations. Let's remix it. Doing a photograph shot in Hasselblad of a 20-year-old. Why don't we try a woman? And let's see what happens now. And once again, we see the same rough composition, slightly off center to the right. We see this blue awning. We see the red banner. We see the reflective glass here of the bar. There's a white shirt with a green jacket. But now we have a woman in each one of these photos. Instead of a man, still have the blonde hair. And it's pretty much the same sort of image. Very similar look, similar composition, colors, everything, except now we have a woman instead of a blonde man. So really cool, and so far, and what I've shown in this video, it's worked well. But I will warn you, sometimes it just doesn't. And there's a strategy that you can try, I'll show in the next video. But it worked pretty flawlessly here. I recorded this video like 3 times, and the first 2 times, it did not do very well at all. So just keep that in mind. Oh, and I forgot to show the difference between doing very subtle and very strong, because every variation, every remix we made was using very subtle. If you try, and I recommend starting with very subtle because it tends to work better when you're remixing, but sometimes you may be unhappy with the results. So here I changed the prompt with remix using a subtle variation to a photograph of Catwoman standing outside of a bar. And you can see it keeps the same composition, same sort of jacket shape and rough color, although it kind of turns it into a leather jacket. We get some eyeshadow. We get a single Catwoman ear here. It's not great, but it is very close to the original. Then I did the same thing, but I clicked on very strong, and I gave it the exact same prompt, Catwoman standing outside of a bar. And this is what we get, where it is definitely a better image of the Catwoman, although it's not exactly like the superhero Catwoman that I had in mind. Probably because it's not a unique enough name, and also just is a woman with cat ears. But either way, the composition's pretty different. It looks very different. This is probably the closest where we still have this bar awning in the background, but it's completely different from the original when we compare what happened with the subtle variation. That doesn't mean it's worse, right? It's still a woman in New York City, and she's more Catwoman-y for sure, but a lot has changed in the images. And that's because I clicked on the very strong instead of very subtle when I was doing my remixing. Next up, we've got a brand new, very exciting feature just added to Midjourney, which, by the way, the best way to keep up with any of these new updates is to check the announcements channel on the Discord server. So even if you're DMing, direct messaging the Midjourney bot, like I am, it's still worth heading over to announcements because pretty frequently there are updates. So there's an update right now for a new mega membership plan that's $120 a month, but it's cheaper for people who keep buying a bunch of additional fast hours, which is not me. There's a new experimental weird command, which I haven't even had a chance to play with yet. It's so new, and it's likely not a stable feature as it says, so it might change. But the feature I'm most excited about is the pan feature. Panning introduces 4 arrow buttons below each upscale. And when you click those buttons, it will extend your image in that direction. So this is all new. And what's most exciting and interesting is that it will extend even though the resolution will become very large, meaning it sounds like it actually really increases the size of images. It's not just zooming out like we've seen before, where it keeps the resolution the same. It will make images larger. So it does have a few rules. You cannot pan both horizontally and vertically on the same image. You can only go in one axis, left to right, top to bottom, horizontally or vertically. And you can't control how much panning actually happens. So let's play around with it. I'm going to go back to my Midjourney bot here. You can see those buttons showing up when I upscale this image. Let's do a new image though. Let's imagine a hummingbird flying through clouds. Sure. And I'll do one more, just so we get some variety here. How about a Incan cityscape in the mountains? And I'll just leave these as the default 1-to-1 ratio, a square. I'll be back when these finish. I'll upscale one, and then we'll try panning. All right, the hummingbird finished. Is there one that I like best? Maybe this one. I don't know. I'm just going to pick that one. So that's 2. I'll upscale it. And now we'll have the choice to pan left or right. So for this, and top or up or down. But I'm going to pan to the left, I think. So I'm going to click this arrow button left. And I will be back when that one, actually that's a lie, because our Incan civilization's just about done. So I will upscale one of those. Ooh, these are all nice. Let's pick this one. I just like the clouds there. So we'll upscale 4. And then I'm going to pan, I don't know if we can try panning down. I have no idea what would be down here. Let's try it. And let's check in on our hummingbird. So you can see it's starting the panning process. Woohoo! Take a look at what we got. I finally have an off-center composition where the subject I like is on one side and there's a ton of negative space. If you remember, I showed one technique to achieve this using zoom and recropping. The problem with that is that you lose resolution, because when you use the zoom feature, these buttons here, no matter how much you zoom out, 1, 1.5, 1.75, 2, it's not going to change the actual resolution. And we're still stuck with, in this case, a 1024 by 1024 square. You can change the aspect ratio, sure, but you're not going to get a higher quality image. Here, when we pan, we actually get new pixels, and the resolution is increased. So this is a fun and exciting idea or new feature, because you can really recompose the things that you're making. Now, you can't go in both directions, or top horizontally and vertically, but you can go in one at a time, and I can further expand this even more to the left if I wanted to. First, I have to upscale 1. You can see it tried to put a weird flower in that one. These are all pretty similar, but let's take this one. So we'll upscale 2. Let's check in on our Incan cityscape. Wow, these are looking good too. I don't know if one really jumps out to me, but let's pick kind of like these bushes here. So let's pick that one. So that would be 3. I'll upscale that one. So now I'm going to open this in the web just so we can take a closer look. And notice the resolution right here, 1536 by 1024. So this is very fancy and very exciting. We have a larger image where the original square has now been expanded, and it doesn't recrop it or downscale it. It keeps adding on to the size of the image, which apparently, according to the announcement notes, can be problematic. If you do it over and over and over, you can get very large images pretty quickly. But let's try one more. Let's further pan to the left. And our Rankin Cityscape, I like that. That's pretty neat. Let's try panning even further down. And I'll be back when those finish. One thing that's interesting to note is that when the grids are being generated and you're seeing the progress, the blurry images that are updated, they look like they're still squares, and it's just sort of the way that it works. It misleads you, although it is introducing a second hummingbird, and it's kind of repeating itself in the other direction. But this is just the new content that's basically going to be appended to the old image. Same thing here, right? We're only seeing the bottom part, and they show up as squares, but then the end resulting image, or images, will not be squares, unless we actually specified that we want them to be squares. And yeah, that's not as successful. I don't really want a second hummingbird in there. The good news is you can use remix mode with this, and I'll show that in the next video. But this did expand us even further to the left. If I upscale one of them, I don't really like any of them because this hummingbird is cut off. I don't want a second hummingbird, but even if I did, it's cut off, which is not great. But let's just pick one. It doesn't matter which. And I'll open that in the web. Let's pick one of these. These are looking pretty good. Maybe this one, so 4. And I'll open this guy in the web, and you'll see that the resolution is even bigger than before. Now it is 2048 by 1024. So it's grown twice as wide as it used to be. Pretty cool stuff. And just nice to have these new features being added so frequently. It's almost every week at this point if you read the announcements channel, which will make keeping this course up to date an absolute nightmare. But it's a very fun topic. And there we go. I'll open this one in the web, and we should see that it is 1024 by 2048 because we increased it in the vertical direction. And remember that we don't even have the option to then pan horizontally. If you commit to panning one direction, up or down, one axis, vertical, horizontal, as soon as that is done and you upscale an image, the other two buttons are completely gone. I can't even try going left or right on this one or up or down on the hummingbirds. Next, we're going to talk about using remix mode with panning, which is pretty powerful. The next advanced prompting technique we'll cover is called multi-prompting. And the way that this works is that we can use the double colon characters with no space in between. And when Midjourney sees these, it acts as a hard break between concepts. So the classic example I don't know if it's a classic, but the example on their documentation is the prompt hot dog, which a lot of the time results in images of the food, the hot dog, right? With a bun and sausage-like stuff in the middle of the bun. What you can do is use the multi-prompt separator to specifically say, no, these are separate concepts. I don't actually want a hot dog, right? These are two separate words, but their meaning in its training data set is so closely intertwined as the word hot dog. But if I actually want a dog that is hot, like a dog on fire or a sweating dog or something like that, that's where I can use the multi-prompt separator. So hot and then double colon and then a space and then dog. And this acts as a separator saying this is two separate conceptual things, hot and then separately dog. And I'll run this and we should see some different results. Now we still may end up with a hot dog or two, but we should get some actual dogs that are hot, maybe on fire, maybe sweating. We'll see what happens. It looks like we've already got a dog face right there, maybe one right there. So in the next video, I'll show you that we can also add custom weighting to the individual components of a multi-prompt, where I can say that this one part should be stronger than the other part. The hot should be 3 times as strong as the dog, or the dog should be 3 times as strong as the hot. And you can see we're getting different results, right? We're getting dogs and a woman with a dog. Maybe it's a hot woman with a dog. But here we've got a dog with fire. Here we have a dog in front of the sun, maybe? It's too early to tell what that is. It's like a cyberpunk dog. Here we've got a dog in space. I don't know if they're actually hot or not. But it is completely different than what we had earlier without the double colon multi-prompt separator. Now, the truth is, for these simple examples, a lot of the time it's actually easier just to adjust your language and say, dog that is hot. And it's good enough at understanding that type of English syntax, and it's able to hopefully give us dogs that are hot without actually giving us hot dogs and without having to use the multi-prompt separator. Now, while that's going, I'll show a couple more examples. Another common one is fire truck. And these are just like simple educational examples. And then compare that with fire : truck. And make sure you don't put a space after fire and between the colons, but do put a space after the colons, although it's actually unclear if that's required or not, but that's just what people do. Okay, so when I do fire : truck, I'm saying that these are separate concepts, and hopefully I'll end up with a truck on fire or flames or something like that. And with the original fire truck, oh, here's our dog that is hot, by the way. We've got flames, right, and heat and sunglasses, and it's probably easier just to use this syntax for a simple concept like a dog that is hot instead of using the multi-prompt separator like we did up here. And the results seem better anyway. Okay, so here's our fire truck. Now, all of these examples are actual literal fire trucks, right? At least in the US, this is what, well, maybe not this, but this is what fire trucks look like. This one happens to be on fire as well. But if you look at what I'm getting down over here with the multi-prompt separator, I'm emphasizing that fire is separate, a completely separate concept from truck. And we are getting trucks and we are getting fire, but they're not necessarily fire trucks. Maybe this one is a fire truck, but this is a semi-truck. This is, I don't know, some sort of other truck. This is an old school truck. And the fire and the truck are not related necessarily like they are here, where it's a red fire truck, a red fire truck, a red fire truck, and a red fire truck. Even though this one also includes flames, these ones prove that the multi-prompt separator does actually separate out those concepts. We have a truck. It doesn't have to be a fire truck, just a truck, and we have fire. Here's another example where a multi-prompt can be useful to separate out concepts. I've asked for an imagine of pink cat wearing blue shoes. And as you can see, in this example, I get pink and blue, but it is not a pink cat wearing blue shoes. Same thing, I ran it a couple of times. Here's the same prompt, just run twice. Pink cat wearing blue shoes? No, the cat's not pink, the shoes are not blue. We get pink and blue, we get a cat. I don't know what this one is, but it's not exactly what I want. However, if I try doing this, pink cat, and then I separate that as a separate concept or entity from blue shoes using the multi-prompt syntax, a : let's try that maybe 2 or 3 times. And it won't be perfect every time, but we have a much higher likelihood of getting the 2 separate entities in the image. I want a pink cat, and separately I want blue shoes. Otherwise, when we do this here, pink cat, here's another time I ran it. Pink cat wearing blue shoes. It sees the words pink and cat, blue, and well, I did sneakers instead of shoes, but same deal. It doesn't have a strong connection between this bit and then this bit. But if I separate them out, it treats them as separate entities, and let's see what we end up with. Okay, so here's the first grid that I got back. It's still not perfect, but we have at least one cat that's pink with blue shoes. Here's another one. I don't know if this is really a pink cat or not, but we have a blue shoe. And those separate entities are more clearly represented in the image, where we have the shoes and we have a cat. Whereas in my earlier examples, when I had pink cat wearing blue shoes or blue sneakers, there are sneakers, there's a cat, but the composition is completely different. So it does kind of change things also by isolating them. I'm saying these are 2 separate concepts that have to be in the image. The shoes are much bigger, right? The cat is a regular cat compared to pink cat wearing blue sneakers, where we get a human-ish cat figure standing up, and the sneakers are really not that important. So it impacts things in a whole bunch of ways. And of course, this is running it once or twice. In the real world, if you're really trying to get a pink cat with blue shoes, you'll probably run things 10 times and pick one that you like and make variations. Now, even when it messes up, like this grid, there's nothing that I actually want to use. I wanted a pink cat with blue shoes. We still are getting more of the cat with the shoes or sneakers, right? I don't know what happened here or here, really. It's quite a horrifying one. But we're getting more cat with sneakers. Those 2 concepts are more equally represented in our image. Same deal again. It struggles to get the sneakers to be blue and the cat to be pink, but it is giving us cat and shoes, cat and shoes, cat and shoes, cat and shoes. Those concepts are clearly represented. So it's just a matter of time of re-rolling this over and over or slightly modifying our prompt to get the end result that we want. Another thing that we can do with multi-prompting is provide a weight value. So a number, a positive or negative integer, but we'll focus on positive for now. We'll cover negatives in a separate video. A positive integer after the double colons, no spaces or anything, just a number right there, will be used to indicate the relative weighting, how significant this part should be compared to this part. So let's go back to a simple example. This is straight from the docs, hot and dog. I'll run that twice. When I run it like this with our multi-prompt separator, each part of the prompt, each of the individual components, hot and dog, are treated equally as important, basically a 1-to-1 ratio. But if I want the dog to be significantly hotter than it is a dog, or if I want the image to have more emphasis on the hot part, I can add a number right after the double colons. Something like this. Imagine hot, and then I'll do 2, and then dog. So no space, make sure that goes right after the double colons, and this tells Midjourney that this part of our multi-prompt, hot, is twice as significant or twice as weighted as the dog part. You can use much larger numbers too. I mean, I could do 100 if I wanted to, but it seems like the returns diminish after about a 4 or 5-to-1 ratio. So if I weight my hot at 5 and dog at 1, which is the default, right? This has just a 1 part weighting by default. It's probably about the maximum level of weighting that will make a difference. If you do 100-to-1, the returns start to diminish. Okay, so here's our original hot dog. So we have some dogs with some heat, maybe sweat here, I don't know, and then some fire for sure. And here's another grid, unweighted, just regular 1-to-1 hot dog. I guess there's some heat coming off of this. There's certainly heat here. This one, it's very cute. Time traveling Chihuahua or something. I like that one, but it's not. I'm not getting the hot aspects. Now, on these versions where I've run hot with a weight of 2 and dog with a default weight of 1, basically twice as much hot as dog, it looks like we're definitely getting more fire, more heat. Same thing down here. The word hot, though, is tricky because we've already discussed this. It often introduces female characters as well, which I assume have been described as hot or attractive. Okay, here's a series that I ran. We have cupcake with no multi-prompt syntax, just cupcake, 2 separate words, and we get mostly cupcakes. I mean, this one is a cupcake in a cup, but for the most part, it's just a regular old cupcake. Nice, very fancy looking cupcakes. Then I use the multi-prompt separator to distinguish the concepts of cup and cake, and we get basically cake in a cup, right? It's a cup there with cake on top or inside. Then I tried weighing them differently. So here's an example where I weigh the cup twice as much as cake. So we get a lot more cup. That's the focus. There's still some cake, I assume. I mean, fancy decorations at least. But the emphasis is way more on the cup. And then here's the opposite. Cup weighted at the default of 1. Cake weighted at 2. And here we have a lot more cake than we have cup, right? You can see there's a bunch of cake here, a little cup there, bunch of cake, little cups on the side, bunch of cake, little cup. So we are increasing or decreasing the relative importance of each one of the parts of a multi-prompt. And you can do this more than once, by the way. It's not just a matter of having 2 words or 2 phrases. You can have 3, 4, 5 different parts of a large prompt that you break up with the multi-prompt signifier, and then you can weigh them differently. But it does tend to get a little lost and muddled if you have too many pieces that you're trying to add weights to. The other thing that I should say is that weights are normalized. So cup of 1, which is the default here, and cake of 2, is identical to cup of 100 and cake of 200, or 4 to 8, right? It's just a 1 to 2 ratio. So it's all about the ratio, the relative weightings within a multi-prompt, but it's not about the actual magnitude of the number. So this is not weighted any more than this is weighted. Whoa, where'd that emoji come from? Then this is weighted here. Okay, next we'll talk a bit more about weights, specifically negative weights. When working with weighted multi-prompts, we can also provide negative weights. And we can also now, in version 4 and 5 of Midjourney, you can do fractional or, well, I guess decimal weights that are not whole integers. So you could do 1.5 or 0.5 or something like that. In earlier versions of Midjourney, you could not do that. Now with negative weights, the idea is that you can remove a certain concept from a prompt. And it's very similar to what we've already seen, the -- no parameter. In fact, behind the scenes, dash dash no, if I do no, red, I don't want red in my image. This is the same as setting red to have a negative 0.5 weight. So you can go beyond that. I could do a negative 5 weight, but there is one rule, which is the weights within your prompt have to add up to be a positive number. So let's just start with a simple bowl of fruit medley. I don't know. I want a bunch of different fruits in a bowl. I'll be back when that finishes. Okay, so that finished up, and pretty much all of them have, well, what do they all have? Banana, we got strawberry, okay, grapes. There's a lot of grapes. So let's say I don't want grapes for whatever reason, no grapes. So I can rerun my prompt, imagine bowl of fruit medley, and then I can add in, using the multi-prompt separator, grapes, and set them to have a negative weight. So maybe negative 0.75. Now, negative 0.5 is the default if I was using the dash dash no parameter. And I can't really go beyond, if I did like negative 2, now the weights of this overall prompt are negative. The overall sum has to equal a positive number. So I'll do 0.75. And again, I'm just saying there's two concepts. I want a bowl of fruit medley with a weight of 1. And then grapes should have a negative weight, meaning I don't want them in there at all. And let's see the result that we get now. I'll be back when it finishes. And this is what we get. As far as I can tell, I don't see any grapes. I'm looking, no grapes. I don't think so. So it makes a big difference, although I probably would have been just fine using dash dash no. But the thing about using negative weights is that you can be stronger, right? You can say, instead of just the negative 0.5, which I would get using dash dash no grapes, I could give it a negative 3, assuming that I'm then weighting other things more positively in my prompt. The next thing we'll look at are permutation prompts, which are prompts where we use the curly braces characters inside the prompt, and we provide a list of values. And a prompt will be generated using each individual value from the list. So it's a quick way to generate a whole bunch of different image grids using a single prompt. For example, let's say I want to try playing around with different artistic styles. So I could do something like, what's our subject going to be? A vintage car on the beach. Sure. And then maybe I'll play with different artists. So in the style of, and then instead of having to say Picasso as one prompt and then hitting enter and doing a second one that says somebody else, I can do this. Curly braces, Picasso, comma. Let's do, I guess I keep going to the same artists, huh? Dali, Michelangelo. And finally, let's do Edward Hopper. He did that famous Nighthawks painting. Okay, so what's going to happen here is that it's not going to start immediately. It's going to ask me, whoa, are you sure you want to do all 4 of those prompts at once? Because we are charged for build just like we had run 4 prompts. Even though we only typed one thing in, it's all about the GPU hours behind the scenes. This will show me the prompts that I've generated, a vintage car on the beach in the style of Picasso, in the style of Dali, and so on. So every single value in my curly braces is used one at a time to build up the prompt. Then I can tell it to go. I'll click yes. And it takes a little while, of course. It has to generate 4 separate grids. You should know that you're limited to 4 total prompts on the basic plan. I think it's 10 prompts if you have the middle standard plan. And pro subscribers can generate up to 40 jobs. That's the highest tier, all at once. So if you pay just for the low tier plan, 4 is the maximum you can get. But you can do some really cool stuff with just 4. But where it gets really interesting is when you do multiple permutations within a single prompt. And I'll show that when this finishes up. So we're getting our vintage cars on the beach. Here's in the style of Picasso. Here's in the style of Dali. I'm not so sure about the Michelangelo ones. And then here's Edward Hopper, slowly coming into being. Yeah, I don't know if that seems at all Michelangelo to me. Maybe I should have said Michelangelo fresco or something, or painting. I didn't give it any sort of medium. While that's going, I'm going to queue up another one and just show some situations this can be useful. So you can use permutations anywhere within your prompt, including in the parameters. So that means I can use it to generate a bunch of different aspect ratios. Let's do gorilla on the moon, surreal illustration. And then aspect ratio, I can generate using curly braces. I'll have a 1-to-1, and then I use a comma to separate my values, just like I did earlier to separate the artist names. So a 1-to-1 aspect ratio, a 2-to-3, and a, I don't know, a 4 to 5. And then I'll allow it to go. And this will generate me 3 different grids with 3 different aspect ratios. So it's just a quick way to play around with things, to generate a bunch of prompts at once. If I wanted to generate, a different color, a car of many different colors, and see which one I liked, I can do imagine. Let's do a storefront. So storefront, and then I'll put colors in front. So I'll have a purple storefront, a red storefront, a green, an orange, and a blue storefront. And we'll go with photograph. Just any storefront, sure. And it's going to take a while. These other ones haven't finished yet anyway. But here we have my 1-to-1, my square gorilla on the moons. Here I have my 4 to 5. And here's my 2 to 3. So you can use this anywhere, not just in the actual words of your prompt, but also in the parameters. Now we're getting all my different storefronts being generated. And while that's going, I'll show you that we can also have multiple permutations. So maybe there's more than one thing that I want to change within a prompt. I'm going to do a photograph of Times Square. Maybe we'll do photograph of Times Square shot on Hasselblad. And then I'm going to put in some different weather. Rainy and sunny and foggy. Okay, so rainy, sunny, and foggy. And then maybe, I'm not sure if I want to do Times Square only. So I'm going to say Times Square, and I'll also do Central Park. So when I run this, it will show me the prompts before I can click show prompts. I can show you the combinations. So each value in a curly brace will be combined with every other value in a curly brace. So we'll have Times Square rainy, Times Square sunny, Times Square foggy, Central Park rainy, Central Park sunny, Central Park foggy, as you can see here. And if you have the basic tier, this would be too many prompts. It will only run 4 at a time. I have the middle tier right now, so I get 10 at a time. So I will go ahead and run that. Come back. And here's our storefronts finishing up. I mean, pretty cool. We've got our red one. We got our purple ones. We have our blue ones, our orange ones. The green one, for whatever reason, is taking forever to even begin. But with just a single line, I was able to generate all of those grids. And now we're getting our Central Park and Times Square, rainy, sunny, foggy, and I'll be back when that's done. Okay, so our first image is photograph of Times Square, shot on Hasselblad, rainy. So we have a rainy Times Square. Then we still have Times Square, this time combined with sunny, and we have a sunny Times Square. And, the green storefront finished. Then we have photograph of Times Square, shot on Hasselblad, foggy, and we have our foggy Times Square. Then Times Square is done, so it switched over to the Central Park prompts. Right, I had Times Square and Central Park in my prompt in those permutation braces. And so then we get Central Park, rainy, Central Park, sunny, and Central Park, foggy. So you can use as many of these as you want. Just keep in mind that maximum number of jobs that you can have queued up with a permutation prompt. 4 on the basic plan, 10 on the middle plan, 40 on the top plan. All right. So that's permutation prompts. You can use it to control any part of the prompt, including things like aspect ratio and other parameters. You could do, a whole bunch of different chaos levels or stylized levels. You can change the genre or the medium of something that you're generating, right? You can generate a painting, a watercolor, a drawing, and oil pastel, all in one go without having to run those prompts individually. They'll all get queued up for you, and then they'll run sequentially. Next up, something completely different. The word Niji has come up a few times in the docs. We've seen it actually in settings. It is, according to Google Translate, Japanese for rainbow, right? You see Niji right here and here. It is a totally separate Midjourney model that was trained specifically on anime styles. So tons and tons of anime images, animation styles, and it results in images that look like this right here. Or this right here. They're more hand-drawn, certainly more anime-styled, and it was a result of a collaboration with a company called Spellbrush, which actually does not have much of a web presence, but is a Y Combinator company, according to my haphazard research, that specializes in combining anime and AI. So it's an anime image generator, essentially, and it favors anime styles way more than the default Midjourney models, which tend to gravitate towards that somewhat photorealistic, 3D, over-the-top, beautiful images, but the default styles of, let's take 5.2 for example, look something like this, right? This is our treehouse castle example from way back, and it's simply, and they look like something out of maybe a really high quality video game or a movie. Not quite photos, but in between photos and art is what I would say. Anyway, when we use Niji, I'm just going to pronounce it Niji. I'm terribly sorry if I'm completely wrong. It is going to generate anime looking images for us out of the box. So to use it, we can first use /settings and just switch over to Niji version 5. There's also version 4, but I would use version 5. Or if we don't want to just permanently be using that, it's not permanent, but constantly using it, we can instead use --Niji 5. So let's do a comparison. Let's just run a simple one here. How about field of sunflowers at sunset? And you can see it added --Niji 5. Now I'm going to go back to using Midjourney 5.2. And we'll just do a comparison with the exact same prompt. Here's field of sunflowers at sunset using the default 5.2. And then finally, let's use the imagine command with a different prompt. How about woman in New York City with umbrella? And this time I will specify Niji 5. You can also do Niji 4. And this is just a one-time thing, just like changing the version from one prompt to the next. And it allows me to selectively use the Niji family of models. I'll be back when these finish. Okay, so the sunflowers are done. Here is the regular 5.2 model that's fancy, over the top, really high colors, high dynamic range, fantasy looking illustration /photo/video game image. I didn't coach it in any direction, right? I didn't say illustration, photograph, drawing, nothing like that. This is just the default styles that we get. Here is the same thing done with the Niji model. Much more painterly, more, well, just anime looking. I don't know what your words to use to describe it other than anime, but that's the whole point. It was trained on a huge data set of anime images. And here is the woman in New York City with umbrella using the Niji prompt. Again, very anime looking. From everything from the drawing style, the colors, the composition, to the actual characters. And that's one of the biggest differences is anime people have a very specific look to them. The way that they're drawn, the way their features are drawn, the way their hair is drawn. And so if you're trying to make anime images, Niji is the way to go. So we'll just try a few more prompts, and then in the next video, I'll talk a bit more about the style parameter, which works differently with Niji than it does with the native or the regular Midjourney models. So let's try family of ducks in a pond with Niji 5. And then let's do one more example. How about something super cute? Cat and dog cuddling. Okay, I ran a few more prompts. Family of ducks in a pond with Niji 5. Here's what we're looking at. Very beautiful, painted looking, very anime inspired images of ducks in a pond. I ran the same prompt again, just using 5.2, non-Niji, just a regular Midjourney prompt. Very different look, right? More, I don't guess, realistic. It's still very illustrated. The words fail me here to describe the art, but clearly a very different look from what we see here. These almost look like stills out of a Miyazaki movie. This looks like, well, it looks like a Midjourney image. And then here is the cat and dog cuddling with Niji. Again, very anime styled, very hand-drawn, painted, and then we compare that to basically what's almost photorealistic using V5.2. Okay, so that's Niji. Next, we're going to talk about the style parameter and how it works with Niji because it's more complicated than it is with any of the other models, the 5.2, 5.1, 5, 4, and so on, where we can have style raw or nothing. With Niji, we have a couple of choices. Okay, next, let's talk about the different style parameter values that we can use with the Niji models, or model. Unlike with the other versions of... Next, we're going to talk about the different values for the style parameter that are specific to the Niji model, or Niji. I tried to ask my Japanese friend, and she said Niji, but I feel like I've already lost the way she said it. So we're back to my Americanized Niji. Anyway, remember that the style parameter, normally with the regular family of models, 4, 5, 5.1, 5.2, and so on, only has one value. You either don't use it, or you set style to raw, which strips away some of the default Midjourney styles that have been baked into the model. With the Niji model, we have 4 different options. We can set style to cute, expressive, original, or scenic. And there's not a lot of information on the differences between them, except on this one page on the Midjourney docs about the style parameter. We'll start with style cute. It creates charming and adorable characters, props, and settings. Expressive has more sophisticated, illustrated feeling. So let's compare their examples here. This is pastel fields of oxalis, a type of flower. And here we have the default. Here's cute. Let's see if I can open that up. All right. And then we have expressive, which is supposed to be, I guess, more impressive illustration, more sophisticated illustration. And then we have scenic, that makes beautiful backgrounds and cinematic character moments in the context of their fantastical settings. And this is scenic. Right there. Now, I kind of think that the prompt they did doesn't do a great job at demonstrating the differences. Cute. You can see the difference in the styles, but I think it also helps if you add characters in, sort of like what they did here. So here's the default. Here's the cute style of I think it's a hamster, where it really intensifies the cuteness. Here is the expressive, which is a more complex style of illustration, so it's definitely more detailed. And then finally, here is scenic. And this is supposed to put the characters and emphasize the background a bit more and the action, I believe. Anyway, I don't use Niji all that much because I prefer generally the styles for my purposes, at least. I'm not generating a lot of anime-inspired images, but clearly lots of people are. But I tend to prefer the Midjourney model. But don't let me discourage you from using it. So let's do a couple of examples. Let's come up with a character. Let's just do a woman or a man. Let's do, how about a boy riding bicycle with a backpack or something like that. I guess I should say boy with backpack on, just to try and keep that clearer. Riding bicycle through village. Okay, then I'm going to specify that we're using Niji version 5. Then I'll just do the original. I shouldn't say original, that's actually confusing. I'll do the default style, because there also is an original style. And it's a little confusing. If you set style to original, it uses the original version of Model 5, Niji Model 5, which used to be the default before a couple months ago, May 26, 2023. So this is our default, just Niji 5. It's the most recent version of Niji. Niji 5 -- style original is the slightly older version of Niji 5. And then we have cute, expressive, and scenic. So why don't I now move on to -- style cute, -- style expressive, and -- style scenic. And I'll be back when these finish. Okay, 3 of them have finished up. I'm still waiting on the expressive one to finish. Or sorry, the scenic one. Here is the plain current version of Niji 5. And again, looks very anime. Beautiful illustrations. It's not impossible, but it's much harder to get regular plain old Midjourney models to do this compared to Niji. Here we have the cute style, and it's very apparent what the difference is now, right? It's much cuter, more simplified, a very different style of anime drawing. Still nice, but a very different result, right? It almost looks like something from a storybook, whereas this looks like something out of a Miyazaki film, and my anime vocabulary is highly limited. I've seen like 5 or 6 animes in my life, although I am working my way through One Piece right now. Anyway, keep going down. Here is our expressive version that is generally more complex illustrations, more complex shading, and you can see that certainly in this one here. Also looks like something straight out of an anime series or a movie, but it's a different feel to this, the default style, and very different from cute. I think cute is the most distinct style that you can choose from with Niji. And then here is our scenic version, where there's a greater emphasis on the background, the landscape, the relationship between the character and the landscape. Things tend to be slightly more realistic, or at least more detailed. Realistic might be the wrong term because it still is very stylized, but there's more realism to it. Okay, so those are the different styles, except for the original style, which you can play with, but it's just using the older version of Niji. Not Niji 4, but the old version of Niji 5. That was the default until May 26, 2023. All right, so that is Niji. There's a lot of fun things you can do with it if you're interested in creating very illustrative-looking things, and if you're interested in anime. So another brand new feature in Midjourney, as of recording this, it's like half a day old, at least publicly available for half a day, is called the weird parameter, and it's a little hard to explain. The idea is that higher weird values, which goes from 0 to 3,000, which is kind of a confusing range. You have to keep, all the different parameters have different ranges, right? It'd be nice if it's just 0 to 100 for everything, but it is what it is. And weird goes from 0 to 3,000. The default is 0, so weird is not present normally. It is a highly experimental feature, as it says here, and in the announcements channel on Discord, they make it clear that its behavior will likely change. But the idea is that if you increase weird, you can get more unusual images, what they refer to as quirky and offbeat. And that might kind of sound like chaos, and they have an explanation here. Chaos controls how diverse the initial grid of images are. Weird controls how unusual images are compared to previous Midjourney images, so it makes things weirder. Chaos makes things more diverse within an individual grid, and then Stylize controls how much of Midjourney's default stylistic preferences are applied. You add it to the end using --weird or --w, and then a value from 0 to 3,000. So let's try it out. First of all, here's their example of a cyanotype cat, and here's weird of 0. Here's weird of 250, 500, and 1,000, and we start to get definitely weirder, more unusual imagery as we move over to the right. We increase that value. Here's a prompt for a lithograph potato, where weird starts at 0, goes all the way up to 1,000, and we get more unusual images. And one more time, here's clockwork chicken, no weird value present, well, set to 0, which is the default, and then we increase it, and we end up with some definitely some offbeat, quirky, unusual images. So I think it's one of those things you play around with, and they make it clear that if you want to get more attractive, weird things, increase Stylize along with weird, and try starting with similar values for both. If you just increase weird, you might get ugly results, weird and ugly. If you want weird and pretty, increase Stylize. So let's try something. Hardest part is always coming up with what we're even going to imagine. How about a human octopus hybrid, and we'll set weird to 0, which is the default, and then let's go up to 250, and then I guess I'll run a bunch of these. I probably should have used a permutation prompt, but 500, 1,000, and then I'll just massively increase it from there, and then we'll go to 3,000, and I'll be back when all of these finish up, or at least some of them finish. Our results are starting to come in. Here's the default, no weird value present, set to 0. And we get pretty much what we expect from Midjourney, the default aesthetic. We've got human octopus hybrids. All of them are quite horrifying. Then I increased it to 250, and already we see a huge difference in how weird these images are. A man just holding an octopus, a man with sunglasses standing in front of some octopus skin-looking creature. This man here, it's like a collage-looking thing. Further down, here's 500. Some very weird results. Not a huge fan of a lot of what we're getting, but let's try then rerunning this with higher values for Stylize, as the documentation recommends. Here's weird of 1,000. Kind of interesting. A lot of really surrealistic-looking compositions. And here's weird of 2,000. We get a lot more like painterly looking things, collage looking things, disjointed compositions, and here's weird of 3,000. So still very much a human octopus based prompt. This one, I don't even know what to say about that. This is like generating things that look like indie band album covers. I could easily see that one being a band album cover. Okay, so let's try running this again, but this time I will scale up the Stylize parameter as we go. And I won't run all of them, it'll just take too long, but let's do a few of them. So weirdness of 250 and Stylize of 250. And then let's just go right on up to 1,000 and set Stylize to 1,000, which is the maximum value. So I guess we'll also try one in the middle. So even though weird goes up to 3,000, we can't set Stylize to 3,000. Let's do 800 for Stylize and 800 for weird. And see how those turn out. Oh, what did I mess up there? Need a space. Okay, So these have finished up. Here's our human octopus hybrid, weirdness of 250, stylized of 250. So still very unusual compositions. I wouldn't say that they're conventionally attractive either, but let's compare the aesthetic here. So it's still weirdness, but compare that to what we got earlier when I made weirdness go to 250. It's a lot more disjointed, sort of collage-y photo-looking things there compared to here, where it's closer to the Midjourney aesthetic. And then let's look at 800. So some very weird things, but still kind of looks like what you would expect from Midjourney, and we don't have such, I hate to say janky, but it doesn't seem as janky. It's weird, but also cohesive within each image. Compare that to, I don't think I ran 800, but I ran 1000. And I ran, was it 500? Where some of these things are just like stuck on top of one another. An octopus tentacle plus a cutout of a human. Same thing here, same thing here. So the stylized parameter is certainly making a difference, but the weird parameter is still doing a job for sure. And then here's weirdness of 1000, or weird of 1000, and stylized 1000. Very weird, but it basically seems to polish things a bit, and we don't end up with results like this, although these are kind of cool and hard to get out of Midjourney normally. If you don't use the weird parameter, you could definitely accomplish it, but I think its stylistic preferences would steer you away from something totally bizarre like this or this here. So again, this is brand new. I haven't played with it very much at all, like 10 minutes before this video, but it's fun, and I'm sure it will change, as the docs say, as the Discord server says in the announcements channel, but this is how it works for now. The higher value that you provide to weird, which goes from 0 to 3000, the higher the value, the more unusual the images are. Basically, the more original and less similar to previously generated images they'll be. In this video, I just want to show you some of my favorite prompting techniques that aren't necessarily useful, but are just kind of fun niche things that you can do. And one of the first that we'll look at is knolling. So Knolling. I've mentioned it once or twice throughout the course so far. It's the practice, the art, I guess you would call it, of displaying objects in a flat surface. I think it originally just started as a necessity, like in, I don't know, doctors' offices, or I don't know who did it originally, but now it's kind of a trendy form of graphic design and art. So you can do all sorts of things just using the word knolling. Oh, wow, even just by Googling knolling. Here's an article about Midjourney with knolling. So we can generate things, anything you want. Let's just say computer parts, knolling. And then let's do something completely different. How about butterflies and insects? And then you could change the style. You could probably do an illustrated knolling instead of a photographic one. While those are going, let's take a look at another fun thing that you can do, which is tilt-shift photography. So tilt-shift lenses, as far as I understand, are a specific type of lens that have a very, well, I don't even know what the right term is, a very limited focal plane where things get very blurred out if they're not in focus, but it also has a side effect of making things look like they're miniature. So you may have seen, things like this. This is a photograph of some city where the buildings look tiny and miniature and everything looks kind of fake. So you can use that keyword, tilt shift, in any sort of prompts. Oh, here's our knollings coming in, by the way. Here's our computer parts all arranged nicely on a surface. Butterflies and insects. There we go. The butterflies and insects finished up. Some really cool stuff. And you can easily create, a nice looking blog header, for example. If you wanted to have let's say a blog post on computers, maybe not as a square, but I can upscale one of these. Let's take maybe the first one. And then let's zoom out. Let's do a custom zoom. I'm going to change the aspect ratio to something super wide, like 16 by 9. And maybe I'll zoom 1.5 times. And I'll keep the prompt the same. And this keeps happening to me. What are you complaining about? Zoom 1.5. That is valid. Maybe I had a typo I missed, but it's complaining about the 1.5. Now it's fine with the 1.5. This has happened 2 or 3 times. No idea. All right, so now let's try tilt shift while that's going. So let's do a tilt shift of a music festival, tilt shift photography. All right. Another thing that's fun is to use the keyword cutaway. So cutaway diagrams are things like this, where we have an object or a place, and then the diagram, the illustration cuts away to reveal some of the insides. I had a really cool cutaway children's book when I was a kid about planes and buildings, and it had all sorts of fun illustrations like this. So we just use that cutaway keyword on any sort of prompt. I mean, some make more sense than others, but let's do a, I don't know, futuristic shopping mall cutaway. And let's do one more. Maybe this time we'll do it on a bomber. Oh, I forgot to change the aspect ratio on that. Well, that's annoying. Darn. Let me rerun that. Custom zoom. I want 1.5, but I want the aspect ratio to be 16:9. Okay. So here's our tilt shift photography coming in. We get some really cool results. It's a very specific style, maybe not for everyday use, but this is exactly what I had in mind. These are pretty neat. Everything looks super miniature. Okay, so back to cutaway. Let's do a vehicle or maybe a tractor cutaway. And then if I say diagram, it will probably be more illustrated or drawn looking. And if I don't do that and I just say cutaway, it might be more realistic looking. Let's see. Here's another one that's fun. It's pretty trendy today, this form of paper art where you have different layers of paper stacked on top to create larger compositions and images. You get this nice sense of depth, but it's also still very flat because it's just colored paper. So let's do imagine layered paper, how about forest scene? And next, another very trendy thing is to do double exposures. So a double exposure is basically what it sounds like back in the world of film photography, where you expose the film to light, normally just once, and that captures your image. But there's nothing stopping you from recapturing an image on the same piece of film. And a lot of the times it looks terrible if you try it in real life, so you have to be pretty skilled to do it. But with Midjourney, we can create double exposures by using just the double exposure phrase. So these are all examples of what a double exposure looks like, where it's a combination of different images. So let's try imagine man, butterflies, double exposure. And let's check in on our other images. So here's our futuristic shopping mall cutaway. Here is the updated knolling that I zoomed out on. I'm not actually thrilled with how that one turned out. It feels very disjointed, right? Where it just kind of took the original image and I don't know, doesn't look great for whatever reason with the zoom out on an image like this. Maybe it just has to do with how it's so self-contained and basically a square. Obviously the image itself was a square to start with, but the content itself is also very much a square. Here is our cool cutaways of tractors. So we're seeing some of the internals in there. And now my double exposure man with butterflies is coming in. All right. Next, pixel art, pretty self-explanatory, but you can do some fun things here. I've done a prompt, something, I can't remember exactly what it was, but I had a blog post a while ago where I was writing about OpenAI, and I think just artificial intelligence, computer, pixel art. I wanted something more playful instead of like this scary AI, like robot theme. I wanted something that was a bit more, just playful. All right, so the double exposure here, this is not really a double exposure. This looks closer, and this is much more like a double exposure image. Now, we might want to try leading our prompt with double exposure photograph of man, and let's do trees. Oh, here we go. Look at this awesome layered paper art. Some of those are really neat. I think they look pretty cool. Okay, well, the pixel art is coming in. It's a little bit more sinister than I had in mind still. It is pixel art, but I might tweak it a bit and, say something like playful pixel art. So let's do artificial intelligence, playful, or maybe I'll actually describe the subject as playful. Video game style. Okay. And now here, this is a much more conventional double exposure. All of these, this is what a lot of them end up turning out like, where you just end up with two images layered on top, but this is more the look, or maybe this one, that people are going after when they want a double exposure. Pretty cool stuff. I really like this paper art one, to be honest. Anyway, so nothing exceedingly useful, just some fun things that I find, I guess, personally just pleasing to look at. I really like the tilt shift style. I really like doing the knollings. This one especially up here. These are pretty neat. That one is nice. double exposures, paper art, pixel art, all that stuff. Lots of fun styles for you to play with, and part of the fun is just finding the right keywords and the right way of phrasing things. Okay, there we go. This is a little bit more playful and less sinister, and still pixel art, although this is, well, I guess that's pixel art, just very detailed. This is kind of more what I had in mind, or this here. All right, so just some fun different styles you can try. Next, I want to talk about using Midjourney to generate logos or icons, some sort of small asset that we could use as a part of branding for, let's say we run, should we do a bike shop or I don't know, a digital ad agency? Who knows? We'll come up with some idea. Maybe we'll start with a bike shop, maybe a mountain bike shop. So we've kind of run up against the issue of using the word logo itself, which often connotes text, and we get stuck with some awful Midjourney text generation. But why don't we just begin our process here with, logo for mountain bike company, and then some style ideas. Maybe we'll do 2D, minimalist. Let's start there. Of course, I forgot to hit record earlier, because what I actually did is I reran the same prompt, but I increased the chaos just a little to 10. And I ran it 3 times, I believe, just as a way to brainstorm, right? It's a way to sort of get different styles, different ideas, compositions, and then I can pick one and maybe generate variations on it. So remember that chaos is pretty sensitive, or 5.2 especially treats chaos way stronger than previous versions of the model. So just going to 10 tends to be enough for me, even though it goes much higher than that. So looking at these, just personal preference, not really a fan of that one. This one's pretty nice. This one's nice. I mean, that one's nice, but I think I like this one. So I'm going to start by just generating variations on this, which is number 4. I won't bother upscaling it first. Let's just make variations on it there. Let's also try, what was the other one I liked? This one or this one. I don't know if I want a dark background for our logo. I might want it to look good on, a white t-shirt. So maybe I'll try this one here too. So that is 3, right? Yes, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. And so you can see I got some variations coming in. Fortunately, I'm not getting any text in these. And I think it just depends. Well, it does depend on the prompt, because earlier in the course I used the word logo and got text everywhere. So some of the other things you can try is badge, icon instead of logo, because icons typically don't have text. Badges oftentimes won't have text either. And they still kind of connote the same idea, a small brand, asset, a representation of something. Okay, so this one finished up, and definitely not a fan of that, or that. It kind of looks clip arty. That one's not bad, although I think I don't know, I almost prefer the original one more. So we could always just upscale that one. And let's check in on this one here. Yeah, they're okay. Okay, so here's our upscaled version. I think it looks good. It's not amazing. I'm just kind of showing the process of trial and error. Let's also imagine that I am creating an app, an iPhone app or a mobile app that is a game, a fishing game. So let's do, or how about it's a sushi app that helps you find sushi recipes or something. So let's go with app icon, sushi roll, and then let's do flat design, 2D, modern. Let's see how that goes. And then I'll run it again, and I'll just increase chaos and see if we get anything we like. And then as far as text goes, if we do want text in any of these, the best thing to do by far is to export or just download the image, and then use Photoshop or Canva or, Figma, whatever you want, to add your text underneath or on top. Otherwise, it's tricky. It's almost impossible to get accurate text in Midjourney. I've seen people do it, but apparently it takes hundreds and hundreds of iterations. Okay, so I'm liking some of these app designs already, or these icon designs. Yeah, these all look pretty good so far. All right, so I went ahead and upscaled some of my favorites. And I just, for the sake of time, I didn't generate variations. Normally, if I was doing this for a real logo, of course, you would try a whole bunch of stuff and variations, different prompts, different parameters, different values for stylize. But I went with this one here, and then this one here. So I upscaled those 3, and then, right-clicked and saved each image. Then I'm using Canva here to help me visualize what my images will look like, because they have a nice frame that's pre-built that is the shape of an iOS icon. So I can upload my image and then basically drag it into this frame and I can see what they actually look like. Although, an iPhone background is not going to be dark black like we have here. But this at least lets me visualize my images with the correct border, because Midjourney is going to have a real hard time doing that. So let's do that one there, and then this one here. To take it one step further, Canva has an iPhone-shaped frame as well, where I can fill it with some background. I don't know, that doesn't look very iPhone background-like. Maybe that, sure. And then I will take my icons that I generated, and then I could place them in here. They're far too big, of course. Shrink them down to whatever size I think, an iPhone icon actually is. I think that's probably still too big. But anyway, now I can kind of visualize what they might look like. This is a very trivial demonstration, but I can see which ones look good and which ones don't. And they all look pretty decent. I'd say this one's maybe a little bit too simplistic, too much negative space. So I could easily just zoom in and make this part bigger, or go back to the drawing board with Midjourney. Anyway, just playing around with generating icons and logos, and the same thing goes for our mountain bike store, mountain bike company. I could take this, generate more variations, put some text underneath, or maybe I prefer one of these, put text underneath using Canva or any other application. Next, let's talk about creating social media content, ads, banners using Midjourney. So Midjourney is not going to make us a text with a nice layout, but what it will do is help us make images that fit nicely within our content. Again, I'm using Canva because that's just what I use personally. I am not trying to pitch you on Canva necessarily, but they have a whole bunch of these preset templates for this is a Facebook post. So I could pick, this is actually, there we go. This is all of them here. There's thousands of them on here with a bunch of different styles. But I could pick something that I like. Try one more. Okay, so here's one that I picked also that I like. So maybe I want to go with both of these. Why don't I start with this one? I guess I'll just leave the text for now. I don't have a better idea. So this is about wasting food. Why don't I now generate a nice image that could fit in there? So the first thing I want to consider is what the aspect ratio is. And I can crop it. This image is cropped, I'm pretty sure anyway. Maybe not. Anyway, I can crop the image myself after the fact, but I don't want to start with a square and then lose a lot of it. So I'm going to want a taller image than it is wide. And I'll probably go with, maybe I'll try using a knolling. So knolling, photography of food waste. That might look ugly, but let's try it. Aspect ratio will be, maybe 3 to 5 or something like that. Let's see, that's pretty tall. Maybe it will be 3 to 7. Let's see what that does for us. Okay, I'm looking at it come in. I think 3 to 7 was a bit too extreme. We'll try 3 to 5. Okay, so this was the 3 to 7 aspect ratio, quite skinny and tall. I think this will look better. Let's see if we like it though. We have the problem of the background not looking great. One thing you can try, if I want to match this background color here, it's not reliable, but I can try this. Take this hex code, whoops, right there, and rerun my prompt, if it will let me. Sometimes it does not want me to rerun it. Imagine knolling photography of food waste, and then I'll say on a background. Sometimes it understands hex color, sometimes it completely ignores that. And then aspect ratio 3 to 5. Let's upscale one of these though and just see if it looks good. Let's take 2. Wait for that to finish. Come on. You can see it looks like we're getting some green, but I wouldn't hold my breath for that. Let's save the image, and now we'll go ahead and upload it. There it is. And then I'll just drag it in to replace that one. So it looks okay, right? It's not amazing, and I think it largely has to do with that background color. And there's a lot of choices for how we approach this. Let's see how, see, it's getting sort of a greenish color, which maybe it's just a coincidence, but it doesn't look perfect yet. Although these could work better, for sure. But the other approach here is to try and remove the background, although it's complicated when there's so much stuff here. Might have been easier to go with not a knolling photo that has like 100 objects. So I can try taking this and then put it on the background color that I want, which would look something like this. And I think the colors are just too bright. I'm not a designer, but it kind of clashes with that. So then we have a whole bunch of different filters we can try and different effects. Let's see if any of them look good. You know, we can play around with some of this where we're desaturating, and yeah, you know, something like that's not terrible. Just as an idea. Now, it might be too busy. So let's check in on these ones. You can see it influences the background. It's just not exactly the same color. This one looks nice though, so I might just try upscaling one. And then let's try something completely different. Let's do photograph of 3 mangoes falling in air on green background. Maybe on muted green background. Okay, so here's that second attempt. And I think that this background color still looks better than this one, but it looks convincing enough. It's not terrible. Okay, I'm already not happy with the green background that we're getting here, so let's try another one where I'll replace the background. Let's do illustration. I like to use the word textured illustration of 3 mangoes falling in air. Let's do solid beige background. And I forgot my aspect ratio. What an idiot. Let's do 3:5 again. And I'll run that twice. I'll be back when that's all done. Okay, so the mangoes are almost done. Okay, this one finished up. This finished up. Is there one that we think looks better? I kind of like this one and maybe this splattery one. Let's try those two, just upscaling them. So that's 4 and 3. And then over here, I like this one. Let's upscale 3. And then of course, I'll go ahead and save these images to my downloads. And save this one to my downloads. And we'll see what looks best. I'll upload the 3 of them. And I'm just going to try dragging one in as is. I mean, it actually looks pretty good. I'm kind of happy with that. All of these look decent. But then we could also try replacing the background. Let's take this one. I'll duplicate it just so we can compare. Let's remove the background. Those splatters might trip it up a little bit. Yeah, it looks okay. And then there's our dark green background behind. Or it's not dark, but a sage green background behind. We can try it on this one. Again, the splatters, though, are tricky, and this is where something like Photoshop would come in handy, because you can call out, it doesn't look great. Yeah, it's only okay. And then we have this one, which I think will do well if we do remove the background, because it's so simplistic. Yeah, it's not bad. I might actually make it all a little bit bigger in there. I think one of these is the most compelling, or even this one here. Anyway, so this is just showing how you can play around. Now it's kind of turned into me attempting to teach anything about design, which I know absolutely nothing about. But you can use templates, or obviously have your own custom, whatever you want, a layout, but use Midjourney to slot in images to enhance your social media assets, your blog post, whatever it is. In this case, it's a Facebook post. But if we go back to Canva, this is Canva, there's a whole bunch of different templates, right? If we go to social media, you can make an Instagram story post. Instagram. You can make a Facebook cover. You can make a YouTube thumbnail, a TikTok video. There's a million different templates here for all sorts of different social media. And then you can put your own Midjourney generated images directly inside. I don't know what exactly I even want. I never do for the course images. I just want something that looks good and kind of says, let's do it for this course. So a course on OpenAI, mostly ChatGPT and Midjourney. Something about computers, AI, maybe a robot. I'm not a fan of robots. Again, I think it's kind of too doomsday-ish and pessimistic to have robots all over the place with AI imagery. But computers and superpowers, so let's try something like, just start with, I want an illustration. So AI, modern, and I really like the textured look that I've been playing around with. Maybe I'll put tech in there too. And let's start with a chaos value of 10, and I'll just run that a few times. And then I'm also going to try with S, or stylize, and I'll use a multi-prompt to get some different values in there. Let's try 200, 400, and 600. And queue those up. and I'll be back when these are done. We'll see if there's anything that we like. Well, we're not off to a great start. Pretty much every image is of a woman or a woman cyborg. And all that I said was AI and tech as far as subject matter, so I'm going to want to revise that. Although I do like some of the styles that we're getting here. Again, more women, more women, more women, more women. So I'm going to rerun my prompt here. And instead of AI, tech, I might say, how about computer superpowers? Yep, I'll run that with my multi-prompt, different values for stylize. And then I'll rerun it instead of computer superpowers. Maybe I'll also try, what's some other imagery here? Maybe programmer, and then artificial intelligence. Let's try those. All right, well, I've been at it for 5 or 10 minutes. I tried changing it to programmer AI, and again, the subject is just too heavy on the person, which makes sense. I put the subject of programmer first. So then I revised my strategy. You can see I'm getting a bunch of these. They're nice images, but I'm just not a fan of this for a Udemy thumbnail. It's a little too dystopian too. So then I revised it a bit to be all about a computer brain, AI, circuitry. I threw in layered paper, which is one of my favorite prompting styles, and they're still kind of freaky looking, but they're getting closer. And something like this is actually pretty neat, I think. It's a little bit too scary still. So I might go back and revise it again to say happy, friendly, playful. This one's kind of neat too. So now we're getting closer to where I personally would like the images to go. I mean, all of these are looking pretty cool, I think. I'm happy with how they're turning out finally, but it took a whole bunch of attempts because I didn't even know what I wanted to begin with. And now it's just about striking a balance between what's too abstract versus what's too literal and therefore scary looking. I don't want to turn people off. So I also tried rocket ship computer. I was going to try something like rocket ship brain. Let's do modern. You know what? Why don't we try cutaway? And then let's play around with at least one of these that I've generated. You probably have your own personal preference. I'm not sure which one. I think I like this one. So I'll upscale 4. I also like this one. So we'll upscale 3. And I think, they're all decent. Maybe one of these here. Maybe that one. I'll upscale 2. Okay. So now I'll take this one, and I need to get it to the right aspect ratio. So I'll start by just doing a custom zoom. I'm going to change the aspect ratio now to 16:9, which is what we need for the Udemy images. And I might only zoom out 1.5 times to start. And then the other approach, I kind of like the cutaway option too. Maybe it's too heavy on the rocket ship, but I will get in trouble. I think Udemy doesn't allow any text at all, even if it's meaningless gibberish. They just flag that. I also like this one, so I'll do another custom zoom, but maybe I'll generate variations first. Let's do some strong variations and then some subtle variations and see if there's any I like, and then we'll worry about zooming out. So here's my 16:9. It might be too much zoom, to be honest, so I might go back to this one, run the same prompt, go back to 16:9, because it resets every time. It doesn't remember the prompt you had there, but then only zoom out like 1.25 times. Yeah, this one's kind of neat. I don't know if it's too freaky, but let's see what we end up with. Oh, and once again, it's complaining about my zoom amount, even though it's definitely fine. It's just some weird bug. Just have to try it again. 1.25. Aspect ratio, 16:9. No typo here, right? 1.25. Okay, and now it's happy with it. I don't know what that is. Okay, so you can see that it's keeping my brain in the middle like I wanted, because I started with that square, and then I zoom out. But it's adding in a bunch of like circuitry and stuff. I think that's what it is, sort of, I don't know, stacks of electronic-y stuff. which maybe I like, but maybe I also want to keep it simpler. So another option I have here is to just take the original image. If I like this one or this one, is to try and remix it to get it on a blank background, although it's a pretty flat background already. So I might just download this one, save it to my downloads, and then generate a background that I like separately. Yeah, because these are a little just messy. They don't look very good. So I don't think that's going to work well for us. And then I could do the same with any of these if I like how they're turning out. But I think what I'll do is actually generate a separate background. My background will be minimalistic. Maybe I'll do circuitry, background, illustrated. Let's see what that does for me. And then I can just combine my images in Canva. So I'll go ahead and make a new design. I want it to be 16 by 9. I think I actually already have. Here, I'll just do it in this presentation because this is a 16 by 9 deck. And I will upload the brain image right here. Is that it? No, this one. All right. And then I can center that. Of course, I can remove the background. All right. So it's not perfect, as you can see here. I can go clean that up, but now I can play around with things. I'll add in my own background if I go to the Elements page. I don't think I like this one. Here's what Midjourney came up with for me. This one could work. So upscale 2. But let's try running it one more time. That's the wrong prompt. This prompt here. But I'll specifically say that I want it to be a white background or light background. All right, let's save this image. We'll see what it looks like. Now I will upload this dark circuitry. I think it's a little bit too, yeah, that's too crazy. Okay, so the next thing I decided is that I really liked this image here, but I also like the background. So I did a custom zoom and replaced the whole prompt with simple background. So basically I'm essentially remixing. I'm not using remix mode, but I'm resubmitting a prompt with a custom zoom, and then I changed the zoom to about 1.3 or so, 1.25, changed the aspect ratio to 16:9, and I tried a couple variations. So this is the original square 1:1 aspect ratio. This is when I said solid black background. It's not exactly solid black, unfortunately, but it's looking pretty close to what I want. Not that one. This doesn't look good, but this one could definitely work. Further down, I mean, these are looking good too. I think I'll go with that one right there. So I'm basically just using it to extend the background at this point. I'm zooming out, but what was happening when I just zoomed out normally without changing the prompt is that it just started drawing in all this crazy stuff. I don't want that. So I tried simple background, and these are actually kind of neat. I mean, one of these could work. I don't know the significance of the trees, but they're very pretty. So then I tried zooming out, custom zoom 1.3, changing the aspect ratio, and then explicitly just completely altering the prompt to say simple dark background. And in 3 of the 4, it worked pretty well, right? This one, it still painted in a bunch of stuff. Let's take this one though. So upscale 2. And then I liked maybe, which one did I like there? I mean, either one of those could work. Maybe that one. So I'll upscale 3. And now this works well with the Udemy image rules, where it has to be 16 by 9, but it's going to be cropped to a square. And I may have zoomed out even too far. I honestly might try running that same prompt again without even changing the zoom. Where are you? Right here. I'll just say simple, dark, background, aspect ratio will be, let's go again with 16 by 9, and zoom will be 1. I want to keep the original image the same size, and then just zoom out on the sides, or not zoom out, but paint in on the sides with our dark, simple background. Although these definitely could work well. Okay, so that is definitely looking closer. As you can see, the brain thing is bigger than it is here. It's taking up more space. Okay, that finished up. 2 of the 4, it added in some who knows what, but these look good. I think I like this one, so I'll upscale 4. And then I can basically be done. I'll save these images. I might crop them a bit, zoom in, see what they look like in Canva here. But let's try uploading them. This one here. And then imagine that I'm looking at this on a Udemy course image. They're pretty tiny on the Udemy website. I think that looks actually pretty good. I like it. And here is the more zoomed in, or the less zoomed out one, meaning it's bigger and more zoomed in. It might be a little cramped for my taste. I do like getting some of this space above and below. So maybe there's a number between 1 and 1.3, 1.1 to zoom out. But I think this looks pretty good, honestly, as a Udemy course image. It's very different than the rest of my styles, and I'll probably shift it over to be centered because it's not exactly centered. But I think it's cool. You get some sort of tree aspect, brain, leaves, circuitry. I don't know. I'm just playing around with it. But that's kind of the process I would go through, especially with the Udemy image restrictions where it has to be 16 by 9, but nothing important should be on the sides. So we want to have a square in the middle. Instead of starting with 16 by 9 aspect ratio, which will generate a bunch of important stuff on the sides, I started with a square. Take that square, make variations till I'm happy with one of them. So I picked one of them somewhere down here, this one. And then I used the custom zoom feature to zoom out, change the aspect ratio to 16 by 9, and then change the entire prompt, right? These are my original zoom outs. They don't look good. It paints in some really weird stuff. I mean, that's kind of neat, but the composition doesn't work. So instead, I zoomed out and changed the prompt entirely. Changed the aspect ratio, changed the zoom. I tried simple background. Again, I still kind of like these. And then I tried it again with simple dark background, solid background. And we get things like this, where it doesn't add anything in except extending the background. And there we are. So that's kind of a long process, but that's what I do when I make my course images. Okay, so I had the previous video on generating a course image using Midjourney, a Udemy course image. This is I guess a part 2 or a follow-up because I realized it was okay, but it didn't really look like some of my other course images. So what I decided to do is upload one of my previous course images. It looks like this, and use that in an image prompt. So I uploaded it, and then I ran a prompt, imagine this image URL, and then a bunch of other stuff, AI, computer, circuitry, colorful, aspect ratio, and these are close-ish. They're a little busy though. So then I tried running it again, but I slightly modified the prompt to use the term minimalistic. And I'm really happy with how some of these are turning out. And again, I decided to try the square strategy first because remember that Udemy images are cropped on mobile, so the left and the right sides of a 16 by 9 aspect ratio image will be completely excluded from the mobile view. Now I can take one of these and generate some variations off of it. So you can see, the inspiration, the seed of my image that I provided, and I could control the image weight too, but I'm kind of happy with how it's not really using a whole lot of the image as far as the color palette or even the composition, but it's getting like the general, I guess, gist of the image with sort of vintage looking computer stuff, and it's all sort of 3D model looking and bright and colorful. So I'm going to I like these 3, but I think these 2 are best because I don't know what that is, a bowling ball. So I'll take this one, and I'll start by just generating some variations on it. And while I'm waiting, I'll also upscale that one. And it also gave me a nice solid background color that makes it very easy to remove and change that background color if I want to. So here's my upscaled one. I'm just going to download this. I'll head over to Canva. I will upload my image. I think I have to save it, upload my file, and then I'll just drag it in. Yeah, I mean, this could work pretty nicely for a course image on its own, make it quite large, and then I can decide to either isolate it or just make the background color of the rest of my image match this orange color. So that could be my course image right there. That's just one option. The other option, of course, is to remove the background completely. We'll see how it does with some of the tighter spaces here. It looks like it did well. Actually, you know what? We can't tell because the background is the same color. Let's go to a different background color. Yeah, I mean, it did decently well. And then maybe I like the black. Or what actually might work really well is to take this other image I generated with Midjourney already as a background in the previous video and try putting this in here as the background. Now it might be too distracting. Let me move it to the back. Okay, it is a little bit distracting. I mean, this is the size we view it at. It's kind of cluttered in the middle, but I think it could look nice if I turn down that opacity a bit. Maybe about there. I don't know. I mean, I think that's looking pretty good, to be honest. And again, just playing around, experimenting, but instead of having Midjourney try and combine backgrounds and images, it's very difficult to do. It's much easier just to get two things you like from Midjourney and then combine them yourself, if it's as simple as replacing the background. So I think this is not bad, honestly. I think it's a compelling image, and you have to remember most people are viewing it at about this size here, pretty small. But there's some changes I'll probably make before you actually see the course image for this course, but it will likely look something like this.